everyone could put themselves on. Oh, thank you. I was just about to say the meeting's going to be recorded, and maybe if everyone could put themselves on mute, please, just throughout the presentation, that would be wonderful. So good evening, everybody. My name is Sarah Ross. I am really proud to introduce Ian this evening. Sounds like you all know him anyway, but I am a volunteer with Consuki Heroes, and I'd like to start this evening by acknowledging the traditional custodians on the many lands that we meet on this evening and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging. I have got some notes to the side of me here because, you know, Ian's accomplishments are so long, I had to write them all down. I guess it's my absolute pleasure to introduce Ian Westmoreland OAM for this special event this evening. And after more than 4 decades working in the Australian and New Zealand telecommunications and energy sectors, mostly as an IT manager, Ian reached a turning point in 2013 that completely reshaped his life. Ian in 2014 stepped away from corporate life to dedicate himself to full-time volunteering and building community impact. This began with mentoring programs such as the Raise Foundation, Kids Hope and Coach, which then evolved into something far greater. Ian has a lifelong mission to help others find hope, purpose and connection. Ian founded Mentoring Men in 2018 after recognising the need for free long-term life mentoring for men. This is a not-for-profit that offers one-to-one mentoring to Australian men facing life challenges. MP Julian Lesser officially launched the Mentoring Men program later that year, and it has since grown into a national movement promoting wellbeing, resilience and authentic connection. Building on that experience, Ian founded Consuki Heroes in 2022, and this is a storytelling platform that shares uplifting real-life stories of people who have overcome adversity. Through podcasts, books, community projects, Consuki Heroes celebrates the strength in our cracks and helps others feel valued, seen and inspired. Ian has certainly done that for me and many, many more people I know. Ian is passionate about storytelling, mentoring and giving back to others by creating spaces where people can share their experiences and discover their own resilience. It's not just professionally that Ian has been extremely successful. Personally, Ian has been happily married to Helen for 43 years with 4 children, and they have 13 grandchildren together that remind Ian on a daily basis what connection, love and legacy truly means. Tonight, we acknowledge and celebrate the extraordinary work of Ian, a man whose leadership, compassion and vision have impacted countless lives across Australia and beyond, as we know, overseas, Sri Lanka, Zimbabwe, etc. Ian's work is always centred on one powerful belief that human connection can change lives. Through Mentoring Men, he's created safe spaces for men to seek support, purpose and belonging. Through Consuki Heroes, he's helped people transform adversity into strength through power of storytelling. His award of the Order of Australia Medal recognises not only his services to men's health and youth, but also his unwavering commitment to building a more compassionate and connected community. Ian reminds us that healing often begins when people feel seen, heard and valued, and that our stories, even the broken parts, can become something deeply meaningful. So if you could please join me in welcoming our guest speaker for this evening, Mr. Ian Westmoreland. Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Sarah. I was expecting, and here's Ian, but
here's Ian. He's already done his magic trick.
almost sounded like a eulogy there, but no, I appreciate that.
Oh dear.
Maybe you could do that later down the track.
Oh no, not for many.
So, look, one of the things I've learned over the years is that many people, myself included, spent much too much time chasing success, achievement, finances, or approval, only to realize later on that what matters most, as you said, Sarah, is just connection, purpose in our relationships. So the talk I want to give, Finding Your Best Life, is not about having a perfect life. It's about discovering meaning, understanding, and what truly matters to us, and recognizing even through adversity, challenge, and uncertainty, we still have the capacity to grow, connect, and live a deeply fulfilling life. So much of what I share today comes not just from my own experiences, but from the hundreds of stories I've had the privilege of hearing through um, mentoring kids in schools, through mentoring men, and through Kentucky Heroes. So my hope today is simply that something that I share might encourage you to reflect on your own life, in your own relationships, and think about what your best life looks like. So let's begin. So if I can just bear with me for a second. This should go for about, I'm guessing, about 20 minutes. Would welcome questions and comments at the end. Come on. So what I'm hoping to do through the presentation is inspire, probably challenge, and just give some encouragement. The two first things I'm going to talk about is I've established two not-for-profits, as Sarah mentioned. The first one, Mentoring Men, which with the vision of no man walking alone and a mission of supporting men in their life journey. And then Kintsugi Heroes, where the vision is a world full of meaningful personal connections. I love our mission to help people tell the stories they need to share so others can hear the stories they need to hear. Um, Sarah Mitch, I've been blessed with this amazing family. Um, it's four kids, all married, and 13 grandkids. And we've taken this photo for the last 10 years. Everyone sits in the same spot, and we just add the new ones in. And my family's endured a fair bit with me and my passion to do other stuff. And there's been some sacrifices made, but I just want to acknowledge the support, particularly Helen. She's put up with me for 43 years. I want to share my story, so my working life was just mostly as an IT manager in utilities, Telstra in Melbourne, another telco in New Zealand, and then coming to Sydney with Optus, and then in the energy space. But the meaningful part of my life started on the 10th of September 2013. Throughout 2013, I was increasingly thinking there's more to life than just making money and delivering software changes. And on the 10th of September, got on the train at Asquith, where I lived, to come to work. I continued to read a book that my youngest daughter Adele had given me. And what I read that morning was so powerful, it transformed the thinking for the rest of my life. And in May 2014, 12 years ago, I quit a high-paid job to just focus on giving back to the community. And initially, I felt led to start mentoring kids, which I did through the RAISE program in multiple Sydney high schools. As Sarah mentioned, I then signed up to Kids Hope, which is a program to support kids in primary schools, and then a third mentoring program called Coach, which is to support the families. In 2018, I was mentoring a young guy at Turramurra High School in Sydney. In the discussion I had with him, he shared that his father had suicided. His mum had an addiction and was in and out of rehab. He was living with his grandparents, which he hated. And then he just turned, looked me in the eyes, he started crying, and he said, "Ian, help me. Um, and what can you do? What can you do?" And I debriefed with a program counselor afterwards, told her about the situation, looking for advice. And she surprised me. She said, "Ian, are you okay?" And I just started crying as well. And after a couple of months, it suddenly occurred to me that I would benefit from having a mentor, just like all these young guys that I've been mentoring. And it was the catalyst. I looked around for the nearest organization that provided life mentoring. I'll explain life mentoring later, and was disappointed and surprised to find there was nothing available. There's no free life mentoring program. And that was the catalyst for me to start mentoring men in 2018. And it grew rapidly. Thousands of men engaged in the program. At the end of 2021, I was nearing burnout. Whatever I do with a passion, 7 days a week. And by that stage, we had sufficient, everything was growing exponentially. We had sufficient financial resources to put in place a paid team to do what me and other volunteers were doing. And I stepped aside, continue as an ambassador, but stepped aside after 3 months off. I decided to start the second and probably final not-for-profit called Kintsugi Heroes, and it goes back to the teenage Ian growing up, the Ian with a lack of confidence, lack of self-esteem, thinking who would want to spend the rest of their life with me. And I remember setting a goal as a teenager, if I could just be average, how good would that be? So that's the backdrop. Just going to go in. So I want to talk about mentoring men first off. Um, there's a lot of statistics around men's mental health. Huge issue. I was on a board meeting last night, and the chair of Kintsugi Heroes is also the CEO of Parents Beyond Breakup, an organisation who support men and women, but predominantly men going through relationship breakdown. And one of the things that was raised, and trigger warning, but the vast majority of male suicides aren't mental health issues. It's circumstantial issues. I've lost my job. I've lost my relationship. I'm broke or whatever. So fairly easy to fix. And we made a decision last night. We're going to do a dedicated series around suicide ideation related stories for both men and women, but predominantly men. For years, we ran a men's breakfast. That's out the back of my place. We'd get 70 blokes turn up for a cheap breakfast, and we'd have a couple of speakers, and it just grew. I had this huge vision for where mentoring men was going to go. In fact, people on the call are in this photo. I mentioned before, obviously I'm passionate about mentoring. I want to distinguish between business and life mentoring. And most people immediately default into business mentoring, which is where someone with acquired skills and knowledge and experience guides, directs, advises someone else. But I think the big gap is what I call life mentoring, and it's predominantly listening. It's not trying to fix people. It's not telling them what to do. It's just being there to support them and encourage them. And in fact, one of the guys on the call here, Mark Henderson, developed our first mentoring workshop, and included this amazing poem written back in the 1970s or 50s. I'll find out in a second. I just want to read that to you, and maybe hopefully the words will resonate. If you want to support someone, maybe encourage you to go away from giving advice. So I'm going to read this. It's Ray Horton, and it's 1979. So when I asked you to listen to me and you start giving me advice, you've not done what I asked. When I ask you to listen to me and you begin to tell me why I shouldn't feel that way, you're trampling on my feelings. When I ask you to listen to me and you feel you have to do something to solve my problems, you have failed me, strange as that may seem. Listen. All I ask is that you listen, not talk or do, just hear me. Advice is cheap. It'd be a lot dearer now, but anyway, 25 cents will get you both Dear Abby and Billy Graham in the same newspaper. And I can do that for myself. I'm not helpless, maybe discouraged and faltering, but not helpless. When you do something for me that I can and need to do for myself, you contribute to my fear and inadequacy. But when you accept as a simple fact that I do feel what I feel, no matter how irrational, that I can quit trying to convince you and get about the business of understanding what's behind this irrational feeling. And when that's clear, the answers are obvious. And I don't need advice. Irrational feelings make sense when we understand what's behind them. So please listen and just hear me. And if you want to talk, wait a minute and I'll listen to you. So hopefully that resonated with some people on this call, just the importance of just being there to actively listen. I want to share a powerful video. This is another young guy that I mentored in 2014 at Turramurra High School. when I started, half the time he wouldn't even turn up to school. And we chat about footy. I had no idea. I mentored him for 2 years, two school terms. And then I had a phone call from the Rays Foundation saying this young guy had called them a couple of years ago, and he asked if he could get my contact details. And I met with him. He then went on and made a promotional video for Rays. So if you just bear with us for a second, it's a short video. It goes for a couple of minutes.
That Alec was a pretty complex Alec, to be honest. I was so sick of copping so much things from my mum that I was just so angry. Like, I just felt like I still didn't exactly deserve the childhood I got and the parenting that I received and the role models I received. Because it wasn't just from like my parents, but in primary school I used to get told because I was their child or because I had this as my last name or part of the family, that's all I'm going to grow up to be. I was going to end up in prison. I have no future of a job. I had no future. I just didn't believe in mentors. I didn't think they could change me or have a positive impact. And I didn't care about school. Like, why should I care? Like, no one cares about me. No one puts effort in me. And that's why Ian really changed me, because he's the only person that told me, yeah, you can make something of your life. He didn't actually straight off the bat start giving me things about what I should do in life and why I was wrong and why I was right. He just started having a genuine conversation with me. He started talking about footy, and he just said, like, hey man, I'm here to support you. Can you just rock up and I'll support you? And that's all I needed to hear. I just needed to hear someone say, I'm here for you. Being such an angry kid and I was so stubborn, no one eventually called me out on my behavior. I wouldn't do the work, wouldn't rock up to school, and the always thing is, that's just Alec. Don't get him in trouble, because if you get in trouble, he'll react really badly and he'll be really angry back. So then eventually I just had almost no one telling me what to do. I didn't have to go to school. Yeah, and Ian was the first one then to call me out that sort of behavior. And he goes, yeah, I'll be excited all week, and then Friday rock around, I'll be here and you won't be here. And that really upsets me. And when he told me that just really touched me. Actually, I thought, wow, like, this is a role model and a peer who's actually trying to look after me, like actually trying to make a good influence on me. And I can't even make the effort to show up. And I really took a hard look at myself, and I just didn't want to be that person anymore. And I went from 89 absent days to 2 the next year. So yeah, once I finished the Raise Youth program, life looked a lot better. I had such a stronger drive in life. You know, Ian really knew that I loved working with timber. So he was like, oh, like, carpentry is a great aspect to go into. Yeah, and it just gave me my path. Okay, I want to be a carpenter. I went to TAFE. I did pretty well at TAFE. I did well during my apprenticeship, and yeah, full-time carpenter now. I got great friends. I feel so grateful for my life, and I don't think I would have the life I have without Raise. They're actually helping people, even if they don't know at the moment. They're changing some kids' life right now.
What price do you put on that? And I get emotional every time I see that. I want to move on to Kintsugi Heroes. And again, someone on the call was the person who suggested the name Kintsugi to me. And I'd never heard it before. But when I looked at it and looked into it, it's that Japanese craft where they take broken pottery and put it back together using a precious metal like gold. And the repaired product is far more beautiful and valuable than the original piece. And what a brilliant metaphor for helping people reframe how they see that lived experience. We've done 400 stories now. Our very first one was around grief, but we've covered abuse, addiction, disability, relationship breakdown, trauma, and I guess, and I credit to Mark who's on the call. It also gives us the Japanese art form is just so beautiful. So we put it into all of our workbooks and our merchandise and things like that. There's so many things you can do with that fantastic art form. Um, just go back. And I've realized a few things. This is my favorite photo. I love reading stories. I put on the voices. This is bananas in pajamas um, to four of my grandkids. That was 9 years ago, that photo. But I love it. And you know, studies show it's so important for kids to have an imagination to hear stories. And there's a great poem. Here we go. Tell me the facts and I'll learn. Tell me the truth and I'll believe. But tell me the story and it will live in my heart forever. And my hope here is that some of the things I've shared will stay with you and maybe challenge you. So Kintsugi Heroes, as I said, we've done about 400 stories so far. We'll hit 100,000 YouTube views in the next couple of weeks. We have done 6 books. Our stories are published through video and audio podcasts, radio broadcasts. In fact, Jace from Vision Australia is here, and they were kind enough to publish some of our stories through their nationwide radio network. We run events. We recently ran a seniors talent contest in Sydney. I made my debut as a stand-up comedian. I performed just after the guy playing the piano accordion, but it was an interesting event. But down in Melbourne, we're partnering with Regis to help address loneliness and isolation amongst seniors. We run Kintsugi workshops and things like that. So there's a large number of things that we're doing through Kintsugi Heroes. Some of the projects got underway. I mentioned connecting seniors to address loneliness and isolation. We're doing Animals and Us, which is highlighting the critical role that animals can play in improving our mental health. We're progressing a project with Cindy is on the call to help support disenfranchised African youth in Melbourne who are forming into gangs and doing criminal activities. And we want to support them through mentoring, through peer support, through role models, and through storytelling. I mentioned before we want to do a series around helping reduce the suicide rate, particularly amongst men. And there's a number of other stories where there's a series around gender diversity and migrant and refugee journeys to Australia. Okay. All right. The meaning of life from the Monty Python. My wife and I are keen bike riders, and she wanted to do this bike trip around Europe. And one of the legs, we got on this, I call it a Greek pirate ship. You can see the bikes up the back here. We go around to an island, they unload all the bikes, and we would follow this tour guide on his e-bike. There's still a bit of status, e-bike pedal, but we had pedals that you got to self-propelled. But we'd follow this tour guide around the island. And one day we follow him up. He takes us up these hills into the mountains, gets to a vantage point, gathers us all around him, and starts telling the success story of Aristotle Onassis. And he shares that the Onassis family was impoverished at one point. They had no money. And Onassis got into the illegal tobacco industry and made a fair bit of money. He then had another innovation with packaged cigarettes and made a lot more money. And he then got into shipping, and he was the biggest shipping magnate in the world. And you may recognize he also married JFK's widow, Jackie Onassis. And the tour guide finished the talk by saying, Onassis was rumored to have said, people say money can buy love. I want to tell you it's not true. I'm the richest man in the world and I've never found true love. And I couldn't help myself. I put up my hand. I said, you're selling this like a success story. He's made so much money. I would argue that some blue collar worker or someone, who's poor but has got strong connections and relationships is far more successful than Aristotle Onassis. And when we got back to Australia, I woke up jet lagged and I was thinking about what is our best life? And I think in pictures and for me, I came up with this picture, but maybe this will relate to you. So we start off, we're born, and I've given my definition of our best life is where we use our talents and experiences to positively impact the world around us. And it's where we get genuine contentment and fulfillment. And we start heading over towards our best life. But then the word map hits us. And many of these things are negative. We get abused. we get addicted, we have relationships break down, we get sick, um, we trauma, etc. And one of the biggest things, we get sucked into this materialistic view of the world, the bigger house, the bigger car, the bigger boat, or whatever. And I say to people, look, I've done this for my benefit, but just for 10 seconds, so I could get you to take a step back and think, what would your best life look like? If you weren't influenced by all these other things, what would it be like? Are you heading that way now? You know, do things need to change? And along the way, I've uh, collected some quotes that mean something to me. They resonate with me. The Mark Twain quote, the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. And for me, that was the 10th of September 2013. Some people are so poor, all they have is money. Wayne Wiggum is one of our Kintsugi heroes. I'd rather have a purpose than a Porsche. And Rick Warren, humility is not thinking less of yourself, it is thinking of yourself less. So hopefully some of that will resonate with you, or maybe you're thinking where your life's going. A total surprise to me, I was nominated by two separate areas for an OAM. I thought it was a scam. In fact, I said to someone I've been scammed. But I see the credit for this to Helen, who's supported me through all this stuff, all the challenges. And yeah, it was a great recognition. This, I think many people know there's been some health challenges or maybe opportunities. So I've been through, I've got stage 4 metastatic melanoma. So I've got tumors, 8 tumors in my brain and tumors in my lungs and other parts of my body. Been through a bit of an immunotherapy journey, having quarterly PET scans and brain scans. At the same time, just to add to the mix, they identified an autoimmune disease I've never heard of before, relapsing polychondritis. I guess the biggest impact, the second round of immunotherapy drugs gave the worst case of colitis they'd seen. My gut was just this bleeding, ulcerated mess, and I was going to the toilet 20 times a day, and as a result, I lost 20 kilos in 6 weeks, including temporarily the ability to walk. I just want to actually move on to the next slide. So this is me in October last year, obviously with the weight loss in the Sand Hospital, the first two. And one of our Kintsugi Hero hosts, Natalie Stockdale, is up at Airlie Beach. And she said, oh, come on up, Ian. So Helen and I went up there. I thought I'd be out swimming. I couldn't. They had to put me in a wheelchair and just push me around. But I want to share something that makes no logical sense at all. The dominant emotion in hospital was gratitude. Never felt sorry for myself. I remember vividly one morning standing in the shower and I had to hold on to something because I had a number of falls and just weeping with gratitude. Gratitude for the hot water, gratitude for the medical system we have in Australia, gratitude for the family. And, you know, clearly, I guess looking back on it, I was probably a lot sicker than I realized, but yeah, said the gratitude, I can't explain it, but that's genuinely how I felt. Um, I mentioned we're keen bike riders, and I lost balance, and I was keen to go bike riding again. Most of my bike riding I do in the bedroom, where I can't fall off the bike. But we went down to Melbourne to see some of the Kintsugi Heroes team down there, and I thought, oh, I'll pick a really safe bike track out of Wonthaggi, and I'd do a ride with Helen. And there was a relatively narrow gate, and she got through, and I just crashed into the pole on the side of the gate. Um, I heard my finger break, and then I heard my ribs crack, and it turned out I broke 2 ribs, and in a fair bit of pain, uh, came off the bike. I got this thing where I was going to vomit because of the pain, and if I go to vomit, I stop breathing. So Helen, she's a nurse. She put me into the recovery position, and for some reasons, I don't know why, she took a picture, and I posted that on LinkedIn, and it got 80,000 views. And I said to the team, I need to injure myself every week so we can increase our social media presence. This is the photo of me in the Sand Hospital with another one of my grandkids. And there's one Kintsugi master in Australia I'm aware of, Jun San, amazing guy. He was in the Sand Hospital um, he's there a couple of times. He had prostate cancer and he also had a heart bypass. And the staff said, "We're going to turn you into a Kintsugi man," and with the scars. And he donated these two beautiful Kintsugi bowls. And the photo behind me, there's a whole row of those. If anyone's been to the Sand Hospital, across different ages and cultures and genders, the thing they've all got in common is this scar down the center of their chest. And it was so significant to me at that time, and or help with the recovery journey. So I guess what I'd love people to take away from this is to think about your best life and maybe move towards that. One of the things as well on the start of this journey, I was incredibly judgmental. Things like addiction, and it turned I had no idea about what it was, but I thought, well, I just should just stop taking this stuff. And it's liberating when you replace judgment with love. I said it's liberating. We don't know what people have gone through. We don't know what their lived experience is. To listen, going back to the life mentor, the importance of just listening, giving someone that space. In a way, it's just demonstrating love that you hear them, you see them, you're validating them. The importance of gratitude, no matter what happens to us. And finally, we get knocked down. And I can already think of a number of people on this call who've been knocked down, but we just get up again, get knocked down, get up again. That's it. Thank you for listening. If there's any questions or comments, it would be great. So please just unmute yourself and yeah. Thanks, Jake.
David says in the chat, if you experience a negative, give two positives back.
Sometimes the best thing we can do when we're really struggling is go and volunteer and help someone else. Take the thought off ourselves. And I know fairly well a number of people on this call, and I know that's where the heart is. I could talk about all of them. Yeah, thank you.
Can I make one comment, Ian?
Yeah, please.
I feel like there is a distinct lack of people that appreciate the value of just setting a good example, just being a good role model. That video you showed with that kid, that showed the value of just being a good role model. You yourself, you don't get up on your soapbox and brag and talk about how good you are, but you just do things that you think are right. And it's amazing how many people find strength in that. And I wonder whether you, with the circles you mix in, do you find there's a decline in the number of people who appreciate the value of just setting a good example?
Barnaby, I find it's increasing. In the corporate world, a lot of people, particularly men, put on a facade. And I remember, so Mark Henderson is on this call, developed this mentor workshop. We ran at Asquith Golf Course. And he developed the workshop. I had a look through, and he had this thing called a talking circle. And it was on the second day of the workshop. And I thought, I read the instructions. So you've got to share what you're feeling. And I thought, this is going to suck. The last thing I want to do is be honest and around that, because that was the corporate environment. You put on something. And I remember by that stage, trust had built up. There'd been a number of exercises on the first day. And for those who don't know, the talking circle, you're given an object. Mark, as the facilitator, read it out. Share what you're feeling. No one interrupts. No one comments. Just openly share what you're feeling. If you don't want to share anything, just say pass and move it on. And just as well, I wasn't the first one. The first one was, we're a secular organisation. I'm a Christian. It was one of the elders from our church. And he said, I miss my dad. And then he started talking about how his father had passed away. and the relationship he had with him. And all of a sudden, right round, the next, I can't get access to my kids. And as it went round, all of a sudden, this vulnerability, this appreciation, this recognition, it was just beautiful. And we set up peer support groups where that sort of stuff continues on. So I'm moving from the corporate world to this environment. We've got about 70 people in Kitsuki Heroes, and every one of them has a strong lived experience reason why they passionately support us. The vast majority of volunteers. So yeah, it's a privilege working in this sort of environment with this sort of people, Barnaby. But I relate to what you're saying back in the corporate world. It wasn't always like that. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Yeah, it just frustrates me seeing people with those corporate masks on. I think the strength is in what you say, like share your feelings, be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Don't be a toolbox, and have faith things work out.
And it's contagious. When someone, in fact, I watched our podcast yesterday, when someone starts sharing their vulnerability, it then, that example I gave with the talking circle, and then other people feel it's okay. And often people think they're the only one to feel a certain way, certain difficult emotions. But when other people, they've been there. When I was in the cancer journey, this amazing woman, in fact, you couldn't be here tonight, Anne Gately, she had stage 4 metastasized melanoma, the same as me. She held up a PET scan. We compared PET scans. So PET scan, they put inject radioactive stuff into your body, and cancer glows like stars. Her body was lit up, and mine was the Southern Cross or the saucepan or whatever. Wasn't that bad. And she fully recovered. She's back ocean swimming again. She came into hospital at the Sand, bought a copy of a book, signed it, took me down for the PET scan. So here I am. I'm with someone who's been in a far worse position, and they're back thriving again. And I'm convinced that the prognosis for people with serious illness would improve if they have an attitude around gratitude and also hearing other stories.
I agree. Thanks, mate.
Ian, Felicity says, thank you for sharing. Zoe says, thank you for sharing. My takeaway is the action of just listening, not trying to solve the problem, active listening.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember in the workshop, often, I don't want to be sexist, but for men, there's a problem. The first thing we've got to do is try and fix it. And I think a good question is, well, you're telling me this problem. Do you want me just to listen, or do you want me to try and fix it? And I think we should default more to just listening. One of the questions I sometimes pose, so I very seldom give advice, although I'm about to give, I guess, advice here. What I would say to someone who's going through a challenge like that, if one of your mates, someone you know, is in your situation, what advice would you give them? And that can help them, because they then it's when people are listening, often the answers to their situation become clear when they're truly being heard. Right? Yep. Anything else, Sarah?
Nothing else. Stephen says, well done, Ian. Keep up with the great work that God has commanded you. God bless.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Ian, there was a comment on there from Jace earlier, which I thought was a really good idea. He said,
"Oh, sorry,
is there any chance
sorry,
that you could do the rest of your presentation as one of the bananas in pajamas?"
Oh,
I think that's an excellent idea.
Sorry, Jace, I didn't mean to.
Sorry, could you say? Sorry, are you thinking of what I'm thinking, Jace?
Yeah.
I did.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, I did suggest you do the rest of the presentation as B1 or B2, but full disclaimer, Ian, that was before you shared your cancer journey. So
we could do a part 2, Jace. We could sort that out. We could get Dan involved as B2, I think.
If Ian is B1, I would volunteer B2, but under no other conditions,
Absolutely, we can make that happen.
Ian, you do have me thinking, because we've obviously got our children's program for blind and low vision young kids. So maybe we'll have to get you on at some time to do a story time.
I love that, and what do they say? going to tell us a story from your memory banks or something like that, and you make it up. You include them in them. In the car, I sing the Toot Toot Chugga Chugga song, and then bring each of the kids in with a rhyming thing. They think it's hilarious. And Kevin, g'day. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. That was really powerful. I've followed you for a while with mentoring men and a little bit with Consigi. It was interesting. I was at a moral injury conference last week, and one of the questions I posed is often when, the people that you no doubt have mentored over the years, they get into that rut where everything becomes ambiguous. So where in the past they might have been able to, easily navigate, maybe in the right way, maybe in the wrong way, but they were able to navigate things. But all of a sudden they get into this, downward trajectory, and they don't even know where they are, let alone how to fix themselves. And then, we often come along with, empowerment to have autonomy, and that creates more autonomy. That more autonomy comes back to choice, which again, they're still trying to work out, well, now what do I do? Where do I go? And then sometimes just to be able to let go of their own shame and guilt also becomes an ambiguous area as well. So can you make a comment about that?
There's probably people better qualified to comment, but the thing I'd say, I watched our podcast yesterday, which I highly recommend, with Matt Tully.
Yep.
He made the comment, he was putting on a facade. He had and went through a cocaine and ice addiction.
Mm.
And then he said one of the big breakthroughs for him was moving from shame to guilt.
Mm.
So moving from I'm a bad person to moving I made a mistake or whatever.
Yep.
But you're saying I've got to be really careful giving advice. Like if someone's going through a relationship challenge, oh, you should leave them. That, like, we haven't got their lived experience. You know what I mean? I think it's fraught with danger. Maybe in the business sense, maybe that's, well, okay, I've set up a successful business. Maybe if you thought about this sort of stuff, but I don't know. There's other people that are better qualified. Can I pick someone? David Moran, who's been a huge support. Yeah, David, you okay to comment?
I'm happy to help, Ian. Yeah. What am I commenting on?
So Kevin's question. So someone's going down a wrong path. So they're making poor decisions. So Kevin, correct me if I've got this.
Yeah. So I'm sort of talking about, when people have moved from, I suppose, that logical awareness, and they're able to make choices quite easily. They could be good choices or bad choices, but they're able to think and rationalize. And then they're going downhill. So they're caught in ambiguity. And that's where I suppose I do probably think there is an answer to it. And it comes back to what you were saying before about just showing up, being available to people throughout that ambiguity. Because in my own previous space of working with people, I've often found that people just often need time, and often it's just the soundboarding and holding the space for them as they refine their strength, their autonomy, whatever it is that they need to, at least get out of the hole, maybe. That might just be the first step, sort of thing. But I think it really is about what you're saying, just being there, being a presence, being a positive image for them, not necessarily that I'm any better than you, because, we're all human, but just simply being there and listening and affirming, I think, is so powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, but there is actually a technical thing that happens in people's brains between logic and reasoning and ambiguity. And what actually happens in our brains is we've all been pre-programmed to survive. That's what our brains have learnt to do, is to keep us safe and make sure we don't die. And what happens when any piece of information comes into our brain that our brain recognises as unsafe for any reason, and it could be a loud noise, it could be a smell, it just could be a word that somebody hears. In fact, one of the most destructive words you can say to somebody who's not feeling well is you. You need to stop, or you need to change. If you say that to somebody, you're actually physically hurting them. I'd encourage you to start with I. But what happens is the protective part of our brain, the limbic system, the oldest part of our brain in the centre of our brain, goes into protective mode. And one of the first things it does is it says to the smart part of our brain, we don't need you now. We're in just keep us safe mode. So a person goes into ambiguity. They go into, I'm struggling to make a good decision. I'm struggling to make any decision, not because they're not a good person, not because they don't want good things to happen, not because they're stupid, but because their body has made a change to them that it eliminates their ability to reason. Okay. And this is not their fault. And Ian touched on it with his journey learning about addiction. Addiction is not, I use alcohol or I use a drug. That's not what addiction is. Addiction is an illness that has made a change to us. And the more people we can have realise that and stop blaming people for being sick. I'm sure none of you on this call would blame Ian for having cancer. We wouldn't blame Ian if he had diabetes. We wouldn't blame Ian if he had a car accident and fractured his skull. But we blame people for having a mental illness, and it's not okay. Yeah. I don't know if that helps, Ian.
Thanks, David. I see a couple of hands up. Can I just make a couple of comments there? First, what's been said to me, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. And it really helped change my attitude to that. And the other thing, going back to the point that you raised, Kevin, I was mentoring another guy. I mentored tens of kids at Turramurra High School. We'd walk around the quadrangle, and he really surprised me one day. He said, Ian, I see the school counsellor. I said, yeah. He said, I'd rather talk to you than the school counsellor. And that really surprised me. I've got no qualifications, particularly in mental health or anything like that. And I said, why is that? And he said, the counsellor sees me because that's his job. He gets paid to do that. I know you're a volunteer and you're here because you care about me. So far more important than it's just this love with no strings attached. So anyway, Lawrence, do you want to get up?
Hi there, Ian. Thank you. And thank you, David, for what you just said. It sort of goes along the lines of what I wanted to help and contribute. The only person I recognise here apart from Ian is Anthony. We both went to the same church at one point. I'm currently the chair of Mr. Perfect, which is a mental health charity for men, dealing specifically with men. But for 3 years, from early 2021, I was a mental health coach with the New Access for Small Business Owners program run by Beyond Blue and funded by Treasury. And as a mental health coach, we were trained in low-intensity cognitive behaviour therapy. And part of what we learned to do as a coach was to be good or brilliant, if you like, askers of questions. In particular, the process that we were trained was to become as good as we could at Socratic questioning. You can look that up on the internet. But putting yourself in the shoes of Socrates and asking those questions of our clients and then shutting up. Exactly what you said earlier about listening. And for those of you who are into words, silent is an anagram of listen, or the other way around. So to be a cognitive behavior therapist, we were asking our clients and questioning them around the situations that they were in or where they were finding. There's a very long process that we went through, and I won't go through that with you tonight. It'll take forever. But the point that I wanted to make was that the ability to ask a question and then be quiet, to allow that person to respond to the question, and once they've responded, ask another question. And to do that, you have to be a really good listener. Your active listening skills, or your deep listening skills, in fact, have to be better than ever, because the next question will come out of what your client will tell you. Now, during the 3 years, I had over 800 clients and 5,000 clinical hours of work, so fairly experienced in this area. But if you're going to help people, not only be a good questioner, but be a deep listener, and the answers to their problems, they will come up with themselves eventually. All you've got to do is ask the right questions. So I just wanted to add that little bit in. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Lawrence. And Jeff?
One tool that I've used over the while. Thanks, Ian. Good to see you again, and thank you for letting me know this is on tonight. Thank you. I came across some work on power, and it's really helped me in my being there as a mentor and as a listener. And a lady by the name of Martha Ellen Stewart said people in power exercise three primary powers: the power to name, the power to define, and the power to delineate space. I'll tell you who you are, I'll tell you what you are, and I'll tell you where you belong. And others would put down, if you're normal and the like. And I found over the while that rather than giving advice, that sometimes just helping people to see the names they've put on themselves or taken on from others, or to hear the definitions they've taken on for themselves. And Alex had taken on that definition that I'm no good, I'll never be any good, and I'll end up in jail. And it seems that was perhaps a ruling definition that he had in his life, and until you helped him to see, well, perhaps there's another definition that I can live by. I recall one person I spoke to had a whole lot of difficulties in their marriage, with their job. I think they'd moved house, and I just said, the landscape you've just described to me, any one of those is a major stressor in someone's lives, and you've got three of them. No wonder you're feeling stressed. And he said, oh, I hadn't realized that before. I hadn't seen that before. So yeah, rather than giving advice, I'm sometimes just helping people to identify, and then perhaps empowering to let go of the names that other people have put on them, like loser or whatever it is, addict or whatever that is. So I just heard that in what you were doing and saying tonight, Ian. So that's a bit of an approach that I come out of as a storyteller and as a mentor and spiritual director. Thank you once again, Ian, for letting me come along.
Thanks, Jeff. I was going to apologise. I've been promoting this for a month on social media through LinkedIn and Facebook. But what became clear, I sent out a few last-minute SMSs in the last 2 hours, and a number of you turned up. So, and people knew nothing about this. So there's a key lesson for me, and there may be some algorithms behind that. So my goal with this, I'd love to do this on a monthly basis and not have keynote speakers, but have storytellers. People who come in and will share their story. So that's the plan. I've got a number of people lined up. If people here would like to share a story, please contact me. Another thing, it'd be great to get feedback on this. I said the first thing is I need to reach out personally to a number of people about this and maybe paid advertising. I don't know, but I feel this is a good thing to do. I really appreciate your comments on this. Maybe I can send out a survey. Sarah, have you got the names of people who've been on the?
Just one moment, I'll do that.
Okay. No, sorry, there's another lesson is the fact that, and maybe I'll send out a survey. And finally, I have a lot of meetings during the day and with different organisations. My heart is to try and help people whether I can. So if there's some way that Kintsugi Heroes could help you through storytelling, through our free resources, through a project that you're passionate about, please just get in touch with me and we can have a chat. Okay, so if there's no other questions, I want to thank everyone for coming along, particularly the ones who came along with like an hour's notice. And yeah, please be open with the feedback that you give. Love to constantly refine and improve what we do. And thank you, Sarah, for the introduction and for co-hosting.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you, Ian. Good to see